happen is gonna happen. It's fine.
Exactly. Especially with how much, like, just how social media is so, like, most people are so open about things. So I just always like to make sure, 'cause some people don't want to share certain things, but glad to have you and your
No,
honesty.
totally. I feel like knowledge is power, and it's like whatever I can share from like my journey, obviously, like whatever I've done, like that was a choice I've made and it like brought me up to
Hmm.
this point. And so it's like, why not share that? Because it's like either I can keep you from making that mistake or I can help you to make a decision. That's how I always feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mistakes and failures, whatever you want to call them, are just such an important part of the journey. Whether you win or lose some more, is like you can always
Mhm.
get better and learn more and more. And I know for me, a big part of my journey as an athlete, but just as a person, has been learning from others' mistakes and trying not to repeat those, right? And
Yeah.
then now I try to pay that forward as much as I can, and I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Like something that I always tell people that I've always lived by is like failing fast and failing forward because it's like
yes.
you can either sit in analysis paralysis your whole life or you can either make it happen. If it doesn't work, like, oh well, do you at least you tried and just keep moving forward. Keep chugging
Yeah,
along.
exactly. So, I want to formally welcome you to the podcast. Thank you, Andrea, for being on. Andrea is an IFBB Bikini Pro, and you're doing your pro debut season right now, right? Or you're getting
I
ready for your first
am.
show.
Yes, yeah, I am prepping for Atlanta Pro. That will be my pro debut. So we are a little less than 4 weeks out.
Oh my God. Are you excited?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Like, I don't have any like real expectations. It's kind of surreal because it's just like I have spent so much of like all of my competing career since I did junior nationals in 2022, like playing offense because it's like I have been the queen of second place my entire competing career. And so it's like, it was just like eyes forward. I didn't want to tell anyone what show I was doing, but it's like, you also know what show I'm gonna do. And everyone always wants
Yes.
to know, like, everyone wants to talk about the show. I'm like, I'm not looking back, I'm looking forward. Like, I
Yeah.
like whatever is next. And so now, like, finally being a pro and like looking at this pro debut, it's like a culmination of all of that. Just, it feels so surreal.
Wow. Yeah, I totally feel that. It's definitely, and you look amazing too. Like
Thank you.
the whenever you post your updates, it's always cool to see just like little improvements over time, but like you've made a lot of progress in the time that I've followed you, which is really only throughout your prep so far. So, tell me more about just like your mindset heading into this pro debut prep, coming from that kind of second place lifestyle that you had been through.
Yeah, I have always embraced what I call like an underdog mentality. Like, I always want to work like I'm second place. And that hasn't really stopped here. Like, I genuinely don't know what will happen at the Atlanta Pro. I honestly, not that I don't care, but I don't care. Like, I just think that it's such an accomplishment just to even get on stage, right?
Yeah.
Like I've done so much work to get up to this point, and so I'm just so excited to be there. Not only be there, but like I've worked with the same coach my entire competing career, and like we have such a bond and such a partnership, and to be able to experience that with him and like to know what it took us to get here, and it's just I'm so excited to be able to like make him proud, me proud, everyone proud. There are so many people who have been so supportive of me quietly or loudly over the years, and it's just it's inspiring to me, really. Like I never realized the impact that like my journey has had on people because I have spent my entire career feeling like I'm failing my coach, feeling like I'm failing myself, like I'm failing my family. Like I sacrificed so much to be here right now. Like I'm just so grateful. It's been a prep of gratitude, really. It's been so different from any other prep that I've ever had. Because I've, again, just always played offense. Like I have been so quiet, kept my head down, and I'm still that way. I still like to like work in silence, quote unquote, but it's just different because I do now realize that like what I do and what I've done and what I have to go forward really can make a difference. So
Yeah, absolutely. You say, first of all, you've been with your coach your entire competitive career. When did you start competing?
I started competing at the end of 2020. So it
Okay.
was actually really cool because the day that I won my pro card was December 8th, and I actually started with him December 8th of 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it was exactly 3 years to the day.
That's awesome. So I say that because it's honestly uncommon because a lot of people do end up like coach hopping a little bit. That's just a reality of our industry. And so what about, first talk about like how you chose your coach, how you had so much confidence in your coach, and how you've maintained that even with that kind of like, some failures and some, the second places and stuff like that throughout the journey. What's kept
Yeah.
you grounded with that partnership?
I really think that I got extremely lucky because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. When I started bodybuilding, I had it was during COVID, so I had moved back home to Palm Springs, California. I was kind of trying to figure out my next step. I've been an athlete my entire life. I was really serious into ballet, and then I got into cross country and track, and then I ran cross country and track in college. When I got out of college, I was just like really into the gym, and then I started powerlifting. So I was actually prepping for powerlifting competitions during COVID, and then those kept getting canceled. And then I was at the time in a very toxic situationship with a guy who was an IFBB pro, and I had never really dabbled in bodybuilding. Like I wasn't interested in the aesthetics. I've always been very, very performance driven. And I had no desire to step on a stage and have people judge me by how I look. That
Yeah.
was just not in the cards for me. And it became this battle in myself because I kept on hearing from him that I had the potential, I had the
Your
structure
coach or the guy that you're with?
from the guy that I was with.
Okay.
That like I had the structure to be really competitive in bodybuilding, and other people kept on chiming in and telling me the same thing at the gym I was going to, and it was this struggle in me because the competitive side of me really, really wanted to see what it was all about and see if I could be competitive in that. But the stubborn part of me wanted to prove him wrong and show him that like I can be a power lifter. He almost made me
I don't
feel like
need
I
this
wasn't,
bodybuilding thing.
yeah, I don't need to be a bodybuilder. I'm going to be a power lifter. Um, but then the other part of me really wanted to see what it was about. And so basically during Thanksgiving, during that COVID year, my little cousin had come home from college. She had started at NAU, Northern Arizona University, and she brought her boyfriend home. We were talking about powerlifting, and he was like, "Oh, um, like Sarah was telling me that you were interested in like maybe competing in bodybuilding. My mom is an IFBB pro." And I was like, "Okay," because by this time I'd realized that there were different levels to bodybuilding.
For sure.
And I was like, okay, like this kid has no idea what he's talking about, whatever. And he was like, let me just connect you with her and like maybe you can pick her brain. So he ends up connecting me with his mom, who's coached by Damien. So my coach is Damien Segovia. Um, and I was like, oh, like your mom's actually like really competitive in bodybuilding. Okay.
Like the
And
real deal.
yeah, she's like the real deal. Okay. So um, I ended up messaging her. I was like, why not? Shot in the dark. And she was like, "You have amazing structure. You need to go talk to Damien." I'm like, "Okay, who is this Damien guy?" So I end up emailing him, and he was like, "You have a lot of potential. I would love to work with you." And I was like, "Okay." And me being me, I 2 weeks later packed up my car, moved to Arizona, into an apartment that was driving distance from his gym so that I could work with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to do that by any means. I did not have to
Yeah.
do that by any means, but I've always just been such like an all-in type of person.
I was
And
just gonna say that's like definition of all in.
yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah.
My parents, and like I've always been that way. So my parents were like, she's made her decision. Let her figure it out. So I moved to Arizona, and just it was the way that he believed in me. Like the situation that I was in at the time, like I felt so discouraged. Like I felt like I just wasn't good enough for anything that I did. Like when I say that I was queen of second place in my competing career, I felt like queen of second place my entire life. In every aspect, whether that be in relationships or academics or cross country or whatever it may be. It was like I was always good and I was never good enough for anyone or anything. And just Damien made me feel like I was good enough. Like he made me feel like there was something in me. And I was like, I genuinely
Gotta
don't
believe
really
it at
know.
some point, you
Yeah,
know?
I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna bite the bullet. Like I have nothing to lose. Like I said, fail fast and fail forward.
Mhm.
So I was like, let's do it. So I ended up coming to Arizona, and then from day one, when I walked into Pro Physiques and I met with Damien, he looked at me and he was like, I can turn you pro. And I looked at him like, I don't really know what that means, if I'm
I've
being
never
honest.
competed before. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like never competed before, don't even know what I just got myself into. But he was just so genuine, and he just again he just believed in me, and that was what I really really needed at the time. And so that whole year I was just heads down. Like I honestly isolated myself to an extreme degree that I'm not even proud of. Like I didn't have friends. I didn't talk to my family. I It was me, Damien, the gym. That was it. And I really needed it. Like I really needed it because it took that year for me to really realize that like what I was looking for to be good enough, I wasn't going to find anywhere else but in me. And even though Damien made me feel like I could be good enough, it was more that he empowered me to realize that everything that I needed was already in me. Um, and yeah, so I mean, just from that day forward, he knew how committed I was and how all in I was, and he just saw that passion in me, and he continued to cultivate that. He kept on giving me resources, continuing to challenge me, continuing to nitpick every single little thing that I was doing to just make me that 1% better every single time. And it's that adaptive quality of our relationship and the way that we've been able to grow together and be willing to try and fail and try again. That's just really bonded us over the years. I can't imagine working with anyone else, and I mean he coaches some of the best. So
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
I had full faith in him, and I continue to have full faith in him.
That's awesome. And it's like, I think the best coaches out there are the coaches that can make their clients feel that way. Not only about them as a coach, like having that trust in your coach, that the coach knows what they're doing, that they have your best interest, that they're invested in you, but like the best coaches allow you to feel that way about yourself and believe in yourself and not feel like necessarily you would be nothing without the coach, but the like just having that belief in yourself to carry out the things that your coach is asking you to do. Because this sport is really extreme, and as you know, like you've seen the extreme side of it right away early on. You put yourself in that place, you isolated and whatnot, and seeing yourself go through that and then get to where you're at now, where you're so full of light, you have a great support system around you. I think, are you married, or I know you have a boyfriend.
Yes,
Are
I
you
have a
guys?
boyfriend.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're in such a better place than you were at before this time. And I think like those really good coaches out there are ones that can see your potential and help you see what you need in order to get into the best part of your life. A coach can't do the work for us, but they can definitely like empower us and like engage us to engage what we need in order to go forward.
100%. And that's something that just, I feel like in bodybuilding, especially just newer competitors, they're always looking for something external to make them better, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's PEDs or the right coach or some kind of crazy expensive recovery tool. And it's like the most important and valuable tool that you have in bodybuilding is yourself, is
Yeah.
your self-belief, how hard you can push yourself, and the resilience that you have within you. Like there's nothing, like absolutely
There's
nothing
nothing that beats it. Yeah.
yeah,
and
yeah,
that and I think the it's hard for some people to grasp that, because people think they have that about themselves, like that belief, but they really don't. Like they're not letting themselves fully lean into the discomfort of prep. They're not letting themselves fully reach and break past that ceiling of intensity in training, or their natural genetic potential before deploying drugs, or whatever it is that someone's reaching for that they think they need. They might need it or be able to utilize it in the future, but it's important to like have that in yourself first and foremost, and like have that belief so that you can utilize what you have, but also utilize even more like the other tools in the toolbox, because there's lots of different tools. But yeah, like you said, you nailed it. It's like that is the number one thing you need. And that's going to continue to evolve and adapt too. Like my hardest and most intense training 5 years ago is nothing compared to where I'm at now. And I've needed that consistent leveling up in my own like training, just as one example, in order to get to where I am now. Because like that's why I wasn't here 5 years ago, right?
yeah, 100%. And that's a lot of people ask me because realistically, I haven't really taken any time off my competing career. Like I've
Right.
pretty much prepped continuously since I started back at the end of 2020. And I attribute some of that to I had great foundation built of muscle. Like from I've been an athlete my entire life, but
Mm-hmm.
also like training, people underestimate training. Like there's this thought process with I think especially bikini competitors where it's like, okay, I'm in prep, so like I need to lower the weight or like I need to lower the
Yeah.
intensity or like I'm tired today, so like I'm going to go lighter or whatever it may be. And like that training intensity, like you said, like I've like the growth you've seen in me even throughout this prep, it's because I don't let up on my training.
Yeah.
Like training is like the most important tool in bodybuilding is your self-belief, and then your second biggest tool is that training intensity, and that comes from that resilience that you built. So
Yeah.
it's like deploy the tools that are literally priceless
Mm-hmm.
first before you go and do things that are going to cost you money, but then also cost you a lot of other things at the end of the day, too.
Well, they cost you a lot of time. They can cost you your health.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know the details of how your time between shows and preps have been, but I would imagine, knowing that you started with that foundation, right? You were a CrossFitter, you're an athlete your whole life, You know, obviously genetics play a role too in just your ability to hold on to and keep muscle and build it. But like being so extremely intentional about making the best decisions for you realistically versus just making the most attractive decision. And there's a big difference between the best decision for you and your overall goal and the most attractive, sexy, exciting decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if when you started with Damien, he like put you in a prep ASAP. Did he?
No, so we started in more of like a reverse diet. So for
Exactly.
me, he asked me like, okay, so what are like what challenges do you see for yourself? And like most people, I've always loved food. Like I was a power
Yeah,
lifter and I was at the time even trying to get into the next weight class up to
right.
feel like I
But that's
could
a
be
big
more
part of it.
competitive.
You were trying to build before you ever tried to cut. And that's
Hmm.
what I think most, especially smaller, like women who want to be smaller, so they see the bikini division as like, oh, it's like that's the best thing for me and I want to be that small and everything. Like their focus is on the getting smaller instead of the getting bigger and
They think it's a
building up your
diet and competition.
metabolism, your health, like making sure everything is in a good place before getting smaller because that's just like a small slice of the pie, that getting smaller piece.
100%. It is not a diet and competition. At the end of the day, it's really not. It's bodybuilding. Like
Yeah.
you need to build your body, and then when we take away all of that fat, like that's not the important part. That's how we get to this stage, but that's not the culmination of what bodybuilding is at the end of the
Yeah.
day. And I think that you really need to fall in love with that piece in order to be successful and have longevity in this
Yeah.
sport.
Well, and that helps you not like you're not rushing the process, and that's easier said than done. Like, don't rush the process to a lot of people. But like I said, going back to the intention that you've had through that whole time, you haven't wasted that time that you've had. So yeah, your off seasons might look really short, but if you have the muscle foundation and you don't fuck off post show very much or at all, and
Mhm.
you take care of yourself and your health, and your coach has a close eye on your health between preps, then you may not need that much time off. And if the feedback is don't grow, stay the same, or grow just a tiny bit, then like you may not need that time off. And I'm sure if you did need the time off, you would take it. But if you don't need it, you don't need it. So it's just
Yeah.
that most people need it, but they're looking at the people that don't need it and like, oh, I'm gonna be like them. Like I'm gonna be like Ashley Kay and compete every single year, 10 times a
Hmm.
year. When
Yeah.
it's like Ashley Kay is who she is and how she is because she's spent literally like over a decade, or I don't know how long she's actually been competing, but like she spent a long time honing in on what her metabolism looks like right now. And that means, you know, whatever it means, I don't know anything about her, but just looking at what her off season is versus her prep, it's very close. Not everyone needs to stay that close to stage weight, but you once you develop that body fat set point that allows you to be within striking distance of a prep at all times, then like that's what you're able to do.
Yeah, 100%. And even Ashley Kay, she even continues to grow over the
Mm-hmm.
years, even though she does continue to compete. Like she takes maybe like 2 months off or so, but she doesn't waste that time.
Mm-hmm.
She takes that time to be in a slight surplus and then like train hard, and she does have a very close eye on her, and so she is constantly training hard, and she's very open about that she struggles with training intensity and that she struggles with being in the gym by herself and that accountability piece. And so that's why she says that she uses a training partner every single training session, or Adam is training her.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you need. But again, it really does come down to building that muscle and maintaining that training intensity despite whatever season you're in.
Yeah. And having someone like your coach that you trust to tell you if you've built that muscle yet and tell you what your metabolism is like and how it's
Mhm.
doing and let you know that like, hey, your blood work does not look good in terms of being able to start a prep right now. Maybe I think we should hold here and, work on some stuff before we go into a contest prep so that we can have a good, healthy, and successful, as healthy as possible, but successful contest prep.
Yeah, that communication piece with a coach is first and foremost. When everyone asks me, like, what should I look for when I'm looking for a coach, I always tell them, like, you need to find a coach who communicates the way that you need to be communicated with.
Yeah.
Like, I tell people straight up, Damien is may not be the coach for you. Like, he is brutally honest, and he's very transparent, very black and white. There's no fluff. And I know that a lot of women, especially a lot of bikini competitors, they really like the like rah rah rah, and that's great for them. Like for me personally, like being an athlete my whole life, I
You
used to
want a
coach.
coach who's really
Yeah, like I
coaching.
want a coach. I want someone who's going to tell me how it is, no matter if it's hard or not. And I just, yeah, I don't need the compliments. I don't need the rah rah rah, or like to hold me accountable in the way of like, okay, so like, did we hit our macros? Like, he knows I hit my macros. He knows I hit my steps. He knows I did my cardio. It's like, what can we do to like tweak it just that much?
Well, yeah, and I think that can be commonly just missed for like newer competitors of any division, male or female, whatever, is just like your coach is not there to babysit you or cheer you on necessarily. And like, yes, I want to celebrate your wins, and I do a lot of that with my clients, but at the end of the day, like you should be responsible for your diet. And yes, if you have trouble or if you have questions or you fuck up, then tell your coach for sure. And your coach should be able to work through that with you. But at the end of the day, like your coach should be able to know like you did your job as the client, especially if you're in prep, especially if you're in like a very specific part of your off season, because like you don't want to waste time. You don't want to be told like, hey, you're not ready to prep because we didn't handle this off season very well.
Yeah.
And that's like no one wants to hear that, but you have to want it as an athlete much more than your coach does. And you have to also have a coach that really wants it for you and is going to push you to be better and tell you when you're not doing as good as you can.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, even though I do hit everything to a T, like I have had those moments
Yeah.
where like Damien's had to be like, you're fucking up. Like like you are.
What's the moment that you can share that's like that for such a to the T person like you?
Yeah. So something about me is like I'm very good at compartmentalizing.
Hmm.
And so like if everything else is going wrong in my life, I know that I can focus on my routine and completely throw myself into bodybuilding and everything that I have to do in a prep and ignore everything else. But like sometimes that cup can like overflow, and it can start to bleed and without me even realizing it. And this was back, gosh, it was at, so it was right before I missed my pro card for the first time by
Hmm.
one spot back in 2022. So I missed my pro card for the first time by one spot at Junior Nationals in 2022. Right before that, I did a warm up show at Wasatch Warrior. And so I was, I train with D every single week, and he likes to be respected. Like he needs a level of respect.
Yeah.
So like show up on time, be ready to work, things like that. And so at the time between Wasatch Warrior and Junior Nationals, so at Wasatch Warrior, I was trying to get in touch with my parents. Like they were just being weirdly distant. My dad, as a backstory, is my very best friend. And so I lean on him for everything. Like I just wanted to talk to my dad before I got on stage. Like wasn't answering the phone. No one was to be found. And I felt hurt. I felt like they just kind of abandoned me. I was like, I'm not even asking you guys to be here. Like, I just want to like hear
Yeah,
your
just
voice
want to
and
go
like to
home.
hear a good luck. And it was like really, really bothering me. And that time between prejudging and finals at that show, my dad finally called me back and he was like, look, we need to tell you something. And they ended up telling me that my mom's cancer had come back. So she'd been battling cancer since I was in
Mm.
college. And I was like, okay, so you guys chose now, now to tell me this.
Oh,
So it all,
man.
it all made sense. And it was just, when they told me that, I like made the split decision in that moment. Like, I'm not thinking about this. This is not my problem right now. And so I put it in the back of my head and I, again, isolated myself. I didn't really talk to my parents between that time, between those shows. I did bodybuilding, did everything I had to do. And in my mind, I was excelling. In my mind, I was thriving. I was checking every box. I was showing up to train with D, and but he kept on giving me kind of just like the side eye, like
Like you
every
knew something was going on.
yeah, like every
Yeah.
check in, every time we would train, like he would always ask me how my mom was, things like that, and I would just brush it off. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. He just kept giving me the side eye, but let it go. And one day, I think we were probably like 4 weeks out from junior nationals at this point. I showed up 5 minutes late to our training session. And that's so unlike me. Like, I am the 15 minutes early person.
Yeah.
And I walked in, and I have never seen that man look at me like that in my life. Like,
Yeah.
he was like, do you know what time it is? I was like, yeah, I'm right on time. And he was like, go put your stuff down. He was like, meet me at the hip thrust. And I was on the hip thrust, and this man started screaming at me in the middle of the gym, just telling me about how I was self sabotaging this and that. And I don't cry often. I'm not a crier. And he broke me. And the thing was that I needed that. I needed to be broken. I needed to feel those emotions. I needed to not compartmentalize to that degree. And realize that like I need to be able to incorporate my life into bodybuilding and bodybuilding into my life. And that was kind of the starting point of that for me. So yeah, he really broke me that day. And like right after that set, he was like, "You're done. Go home and go cry in your pillow, and we will talk later."
Damn.
And yeah, like I said, harsh. I absolutely love him with every fiber of my being. And he called me like 4 hours later, and he was like, "Are you done crying now?" He's like, and are you ready to stop self-sabotaging? He's like, because you have a real shot here. Like you have real potential and you can really do this. He's like, but you can't continue to do this. Like, not only can you not continue to do this, but you can't continue to do this to yourself because
Mm.
you are hurting yourself way more than you realize. I know that you think,
Just by holding back those emotions, basically,
yeah,
manipulating. Yeah.
yeah. Like, he's like, I know that you think that like ignoring these emotions, you think that that's helping you, but it's not. And that next day, I dropped like 4 pounds or something like that, just from like
Damn.
the cortisol dump.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was when I really realized how, even though in my mind I was perfect, there were so many other ways that I could continue to improve that were outside of me just checking the boxes.
Yeah, checking boxes is like a double-edged sword, or I don't know if that's the right term, but it's that perfection pursuit is like we think that we're being so just like excellent and elite, and we're just trying to do everything to make our coach proud and be perfect and whatnot. But what that pursuit of perfection does, I think, for most people who are actually really good at perfection, is that, like you said, like it does isolate them from the things in life that will never be perfect. Like, your mom having cancer, and like that cancer coming back, and like being like needing you and needing your like to feel your presence, even with your bodybuilding going on, because bodybuilding is not going to be there forever. And I think that's an important lesson for anyone who maybe struggles with that like perfectionist elitist type mentality, is that yes, you have to check your boxes, yes, they're important, but you also have to give yourself grace. You have to let yourself feel emotions and be human. And it doesn't have to mean like, oh, I'm just going to take off and say fuck it to bodybuilding for a few days because I need to deal with my emotions. It means, like you said, blending the two, being able to have emotions, cry over your chicken and rice, cry over your cardio, and then show up the next day and be a little bit better because you actually allowed yourself to feel. Because numbing the pain or numbing what you're feeling and trying to just push it away only creates more stress in our bodies. And that's one thing that I think, he was probably trying to show you by allowing you to feel those emotions, breaking you, going like pushing past that breaking point and allowing you to really just sit in that. Because when we suppress, we're also stressed. And it's like stress is a normal thing. There's always going to be some level of stress, but if we can't deal with the stress instead of just suppressing it, we're going to just be this little stress ball. And who knows what would have happened in the next 4 weeks if you had just continued suppressing that. It could have been an even bigger blow up when you really didn't have time to recover from it.
Yeah,
So,
and like at some point, it's going to come to a head. Like at some
it
point, it's
always
going to
does.
come
Yeah.
out one way or another. So I think that just allowing that, like learning how to cope with your emotions in a really healthy way, and then allowing that to like continue to fuel your journey and fuel your why per se
Hmm.
is so valuable and so important. Um, my sister is actually a mental health therapist, and
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah, so like it's really interesting talking with her about things like this. And she
Yeah.
just finds like bodybuilding really interesting, and it's just the like I've I always look to her and ask her like how she can see like us as bodybuilders coping with emotions and like wrestling with these things and working through them like in
Hmm.
bodybuilding, and like how she would approach that, like if I were a client or if she had a client like that. And I just find it really interesting to hear her perspectives on things, and just at the end of the day, like life is never going to stop for bodybuilding. Like
Yeah.
things are always going to happen, whether you're starting a new job or you're going through relationship issues, or you're having like there's sickness in the family, there's a death in the family, like something's always going to happen. And sometimes bodybuilding needs to take a back seat, but again, like it can blend, like everything can work together. And I feel like over the years I've found ways to allow bodybuilding to enhance my life. And
Talk
I think
about
that
that. Talk about how you've seen that happen, because I think that was one of the big reasons I wanted you on the podcast, because I know you do consulting for people in terms of like work life balance, hiring, like stuff like that. So go into
yeah.
it.
So I've always been, again, very performance driven. I've always been really driven to succeed and driven by achievement. And I have always heard people talk about how like in their bodybuilding preps their career falls to the wayside, or their relationship falls to the wayside, or they can't do this or that because they're prepping for a show. And I started a new job 4 weeks out from my first show ever. And at the time, Jamie was like, Maybe maybe let's not do this. Like, no, like I can prove that I can do this. I
Mm.
can. I was like, I know how to, I succeed under pressure. Like, I've always performed very, very well under pressure. And he was like, all right, well, I'm gonna let you do it.
You do you. Yeah.
More power to you. And I've just found how, like, the resilience that bodybuilding teaches you, if you take that and you apply that to your career or your relationship or school, like, it all is so harmonious.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people take advantage of that
No, they
because,
literally do the opposite.
yeah,
Like
they
you
do the
said, like they
opposite.
let their job just kind of like chill for a little bit and
Yeah,
or
like
the
instead of
relationship or
using,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, like instead of using bodybuilding as a scapegoat, what if you used bodybuilding as like a way to propel you forward? Because in bodybuilding, we have structure, right? So if you have that structure already, you have a framework to succeed. So if you can take that framework and expand it just a little bit to see how you can continue to progress in whatever your goal may be. Let's say it's a promotion at work. Okay, so you have your cardio, your fasted cardio in the morning, you know what time you're going to train, you know the meals you need to eat, you know the steps you need to get, water you need to get, whatever it may be. So fill in those gaps. Like at the end of the day, all of life, even outside of bodybuilding, is all just prioritizing, right?
Hmm.
So like decide what's important to you. So if your career is important to you and bodybuilding is important to you, okay, sure, maybe like your social life might need to take a back seat, but again, what's important to you?
Yeah.
Um, so like for me personally, like I feel extremely proud to be able to say that in those 3 years leading up to my pro card, I was able to not only stay with the same company and be really successful, but to like build things in this startup company that were so impactful. I was able to grow my own corporate salary over 3 times.
Damn.
I received multiple promotions. I grew teams. I went through layoffs. I helped in layoffs. Like all of this stress and all of these things, and I was still able to progress in bodybuilding. And that's why I know
You
that
know it's
anyone can do it.
possible, especially for
Yeah,
not being a fitness related company, right? Like you don't have a fitness job, and I think a
like
lot of
the
people,
least fitness related thing possible. Like
yeah,
yeah, like I worked for an instant delivery service startup
okay,
that was focused, that was like literally at the beginning built around hookah. And at this point, we sell snacks. Like,
yeah, like no, that's a big flex and a big lesson for people because so many people, like you said, they think that I can't possibly progress in bodybuilding without a fitness job. Or, people will say like, "Oh yeah, must be nice, I can't relate to this coach that's telling me to do this, prioritize because, she works from home all day and she's just, she gets to make her own schedule." And yeah, not everyone has the what's the word? The
like the
luxury,
privilege.
yeah, the luxury
Yeah.
to create your own schedule. But like within the schedule you have, you can create priorities around that, and you can like learn to. Because I've been in corporate as well, and I had a very corporate job when I got my pro card and throughout other preps, like all of my preps until my last one were like fully corporate job, and that's like, so I know I can do it and I know other people can do it, and so it's, but like you said, it's about prioritizing, just like you prioritize, like a mom or a dad prioritizes stuff with their kids lives and they schedule things like practices and drives and things like that. You can do that with your own life, and you can do that with your training and your cardio, and as long as you have a coach that you feel comfortable with, like really allowing them to understand your life. I think that's like the biggest importance of like if you're having trouble prioritizing like cardio, for example. If cardio gets really high, how do I do it? Well, maybe your coach has an idea of like, all right, we're going to just increase steps and make sure your cardio is done at this time of day because that's the best time to get in actual cardio. But otherwise, just like pace at your desk or get a walking desk or something like that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Walking pad is
So
game
good.
changer.
Yeah. I have one under my guest bed right now. I haven't gotten it out yet, but I'm probably getting close to
Oh my
get.
gosh. I actually have one right next to me because we ended up having to buy a new one yesterday because prep brain, I accidentally washed the remote for our other walking pad in the laundry machine and we broke it. And I was like, I am not going a day without a walking pad. So we ordered one that night and it was here in the morning. I was
Yeah.
like, thank God.
Yeah. Waste no time. So tell me, what is some like more another piece of wisdom that has you would say has helped you with that prioritization skill as an athlete and as someone in the workforce?
Yeah. I think that it's really important to be adaptable. Like it kind of goes back to what you were just saying about like communicating with your coach and allowing them to know your life. Like you also like yes, we need to prioritize and yes, we need to manage our time, but I think that people manage their time sometimes to a degree that is harmful because not everything is going to go our way all the time. Like, I personally worked at a startup company where it was worldwide. Sometimes I would literally have to hop out of bed in the middle of the night and get on a call. And it's like, some previous version of myself would be like, no, my sleep, I need to get my 8 to 9 hours of sleep, like you're ruining everything. But like at the end of the day, like my career is just as important to me as bodybuilding.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so
bodybuilding doesn't pay the bills. Even if you
exactly,
win a pro show, doesn't pay the bills.
yeah, I'm like
So
I'm
yeah,
like, where's the money? I
yeah,
and so I think that being willing to be adaptable and to have grace with yourself, grace with your schedule, and just to not be so tied to that. But then what also comes with that is like, don't have a pity party for yourself. Like, I think that a lot of people feel resentful toward people who maybe they do work from home and they have that flexible schedule, and again they're saying, well, I can't do this because they have it way better than me. I have to go into an office 9 to 5 and do this and that, and it realize that like what is
yeah.
and then
And like
work
you
for that.
focusing on what you can't do doesn't do anything for you. So why not just focus on what you can do with your own schedule? If you work a 9 to 5 at the office, you probably have an hour lunch. You probably also
Mhm.
don't take that hour lunch, but guess what? You're legally allowed to. So set the boundary with the people around you and actually take the fucking lunch and do your cardio on your lunch break. Like I've had clients that do that too, and sometimes it is like it's hard to set a boundary with people like that, like with your boss. But I remember I had someone who was a medical, somewhere in the medical field. She was a nurse or something like that, and she was having trouble getting her meals in. I'm like, well, don't you have like actual scheduled breaks that you're legally obligated to take? She said, yeah, but I usually work through them because everyone does. I said, well, if you're illegally obligated to take them, maybe set the boundary with your superiors that you're going to take them because you're allowed to take them and you should take them. And then
Those
guess what
boundaries.
happened? She set that boundary, and then her coworkers started doing the same thing, and then the work environment became better. Like, oh my God, that's crazy how that happened. And all it took was for you to set the boundary that was like you were legally allowed to have, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Those boundaries are so important. Like, I I've always had an open calendar for people to schedule whatever they want. But again, time management. So at the beginning of every week, before anyone has a chance to even go into my schedule, I would
Block
block
off
off.
time.
Yeah, I block off little blocks of time. And maybe it's like 15 minutes, but in that 15 minutes, I can get my meal in. I can do whatever I need to do in that time. And by setting those boundaries, you're able to put your best self forward and you're
Yeah.
able to be more productive at work because if you can show up as your best self, I promise you are going to be so much more productive in less time than you are if you overwork yourself and then you stress yourself out over all of the prep things that you didn't do. If
Yeah.
you can take care of yourself, then you can show up in whatever area of your life you need to show up as. Like maybe
Yeah.
it's not even your career, maybe it's in your marriage, maybe it's for your kids. So I think that it can be hard because I think that in bodybuilding, it obviously attracts people who are overachievers and people who want to always just do more and to do everything to the best of their ability. And in our heads, because I've been in this place too, it's like, well, I need to be here, present for work this whole time, and I need to put this before myself. But when I started to realize that, okay, if I can take the time in the morning to take care of myself, I'm able to be so much more productive at work. I'm able to be clear-minded and that way I'm able to succeed in every area of my life. And
Yeah.
so I think that people just they put prep before themselves.
Yeah.
And
And they think that they're putting themselves first by doing that because like this is my goal, I'm working towards this thing, but like you're really not because what happens when prep is over? You're so stressed, you're so taxed that and you put everything else on the back burner for so long that you're literally like your life is just kind of like in shambles around you and you don't have when you're at the end of a prep most of the time like your hunger signals are off, your hormones are kind of fucked. Like you need to be on it and ready to like continue the prep basically in order to like get back to your healthiest self, be able to handle all of the life things. But the problem is that like when people are in that state and they've let that happen, they come to that point and they're like, oh shit, I have to just focus on my life. I can't focus on me anymore. And then it's just like this constant struggle to regain the balance that they really never had because they didn't allow themselves to have balance in prep or before the prep started, and it's just a vicious cycle. So
yeah, I like people need to it's different for everybody. Like how you can show up as your best self is going to be different for everybody. Some people like to journal in the morning, some people like to meditate. Like for some
yeah.
people it's a walk. Like that there or like for me, it's my coffee. Like I like sitting down with my cup of coffee in the morning and like just being able to like sit there and think for 5 minutes, like I can show up as my best self, but like I know that about myself. And so
Yeah.
whatever that is, like you need to figure that out and then maintain that in prep, outside of prep, and that is going to allow you to show up for yourself and for everyone else around you and everything you need to do in a day.
Yeah, you got to fill your cup before you can fill others. It's
A hundred
it's not
percent.
it sounds like easier said than done, but it really is like more
Yeah,
easily done
it
if you
sounds
just
so
keep doing it.
simple and like it sounds so like woo woo or whatever, but it's like it's such a simple little thing, and I think that if more people took it seriously and actually applied it day to day, they would see such a huge difference. Like just take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes for yourself.
And like nobody can really say that they don't have those 5 minutes, even if it's like sometimes I just tell people who are like super busy, like again, if they work in, I have a lot of medical field people, like even if you go to the bathroom, because like tell someone you have to take a shit and go to the bathroom and just sit there and take 10 really deep breaths and close your eyes and pretend you're somewhere else, and just having a little bit of that mindful moment of being able to just like chill and stop and allow yourself to just like feel whatever you're feeling and focus on some positives, like count some wins in your head, like anything to allow yourself to really just be okay instead of just being like go 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 all the time, like serving others no matter what, like instead of yourself. Like you have to serve yourself in order to serve others, and you have to serve yourself with boundaries and with a schedule and with self-care in order to be able to achieve bigger things and have a little bit of a balance. You're never going to have a perfect balance, but at least taking that 5 minutes a day or 5 minutes twice a day, it can make a big difference. And it shows you how much more, how powerful that is too. I think that's what some people who really listen to this kind of advice and they start to take it, like, okay, I can take a 5 minute walk in the morning. I can do that. Can't do anything else, but I'm going to take the walk. And then they do it and they realize like, wow, I was so much more productive for the first hour of my day because of that. So, okay, what if you take another 5 minute walk in the middle of the day? Like, what would that do
Walks
to
are
the rest of
so
the day? You
powerful.
know?
Walks are so powerful. Like
So
I
powerful.
Oh my gosh. In between meetings, if I can just go on a 5 minute walk, everything's okay.
Hmm.
Everything's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And the more you
yeah.
believe that, the more it becomes true too, I think. It's just
Yeah,
like,
and you
I know I'll feel better if I
also,
do this.
yeah, like creating those habits, like your body becomes used to those habits, and it's able to, like, it knows what to expect, and
Hmm.
then it knows how to respond.
Yeah.
And there's so much power in that. And as someone who is extremely high strung just naturally, and like I struggled with anxiety for my entire life. I've had to become really really good at that, and have a lot of faith in those practices. And at first, like, at first I would tell you it wasn't working. I'd be like, this is dumb. Like, that
Yeah,
was
I have
actually
the same
something
thing with like meditation. I'm
yeah, like,
very much non-meditator.
yeah, no, me neither. Like, in my first prep, I was like really trying to figure out what that was for me. And so I started journaling every morning. I was like, I've always loved to write. So I was like, okay, maybe this will be good for me. So in the morning, I'd write down 3 things I was grateful for. But over time, I started realizing that, like, every single day I was writing down the exact same things. And it just, at that point, was a habit. There was no real intention behind it.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so I was like, okay, you know what? Like, maybe this works for somebody else, but like for me, this isn't it. And so I do, though, believe that there's a lot of value in like gratitude practices. And
Hmm.
something that I always say is, like, gratitude, like, anxiety can't live in the same place where gratitude grows. And so every single day, like, instead of sitting down and writing down what I'm grateful for, like I see every other influencer do, I like, it can be during my cardio, it can be while I'm drinking my coffee, it can be on my drive to the gym, but like centering yourself, and taking the time whenever it may be out of my day to realize what I'm grateful for is really really powerful. And it took me a while to realize that it didn't have to look perfect
Yeah.
to everybody else.
No, does it doesn't. And it's like because if it works for you, it works for you. And like those are the moments where you're kind of still and you don't have like, you maybe want to distract yourself a little bit, like especially during cardio or something like that. And so like those are probably the best moments for you, someone who's like very go 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 and has a lot of things that she's managing. Those are great moments for you specifically to sit down and just like calm your mind with that gratitude and remember what you're grateful for. Whereas like first thing in the morning, you're in the same place every day. So like you're probably gonna think about the same things. I personally have a gratitude practice too, and like I don't do it every day, but I try to. I have a book right here where I write them down, and I always look at the day before and I like remember that, and I think like, all right, I have to think about something new, and so that for me works in order to like find my own gratitude and go forward through the day. And I try to think about like what am I grateful for that I can like implement and use today in my everyday work, especially because my work is like checking client check-ins and moving people forward through their own journeys and probably telling them to do a lot of the same things. So that's what helps me. But I love what you said is like, it doesn't have to look a certain way. Like yes, this advice is really powerful for anyone and everyone to take, but finding the way that it helps you specifically is the way that it's going to work for you.
Yeah. I think that it also just comes back to like people, again, with social media, like everybody thinks that everything needs to look a certain way. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't. It doesn't. Life is messy, the day is messy, and we need to be adaptable, and it's not always going to look pretty. It's really not. Like I think that we need to focus more on how life feels and how prep feels, and learning how to lean into those things and lean into discomfort and realize how we can utilize the tools that are in us already to work through those things instead of looking for external validation, looking for an external tool. Like
Or
everything that
expecting things to just be perfect one day, or expecting yourself to expecting so much out of life, like as if like, oh, I'll never be happy until I look like this person, or until I have a routine like this person, or I won't be successful until I do things exactly how they're doing it. And like you just like life doesn't look like it does on Instagram, and it doesn't look like it does for your favorite bikini pro or figure pro or whatever. It's like everyone is failing all the time. They just might not be doing it really loudly, and that's okay. Like nobody is entitled to see your losses, right? I think sharing losses and sharing and being vulnerable on social media, like I try to be, I feel like you do too, in ways like I do see a lot of value in that, because it does help people understand that like even someone who might be a role model to you in some way like has their hard times too, and their struggles and whatnot. But just being able to recognize that we're all just fucking up all the time, and but also succeeding all the time, and as long as you keep trying, then you're gonna be successful. So
seriously, once you learn how to release the pressure that you put on yourself to look a certain way, be a certain way, like, and you just show up authentically. Like, why can't we just show up authentically? Like, I'm a spaz. I get it. I like, I make mistakes. I get it. But like, I would rather show up as that person every single day than be someone who you love but isn't even me.
isn't relatable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And I think that's equally hard too, because like so many people try to show up as an authentic version of someone else. And it's because they see an influencer and them doing things a certain way, so they try to do it their way. So that's why you see so many people looking exactly the same on Instagram and putting out the same exact content, and who knows what's authentic anymore. But I think when you like feel pulled towards someone, not because of how something looks, but because of like their character or a value that you share, or something that you truly relate to that isn't like shiny and pretty and sexy, that's when you can like really know like, all right, that's an authentic person. And like I see you doing that in a big way, and that's why like I was drawn to you and having you on this
Oh,
podcast,
thank
because
you. That's a
like
huge compliment.
yeah, because you're showing up how you want to, and you're putting yourself out there, and I think like you have just a lot of like light to give to people, and I feel like I'm gonna have like so many mic drop moments from this podcast episode that I want to post.
Thank
Um,
you. Sometimes I feel like I just like ramble for
I know,
years.
me too. It's okay. But I promise people want to hear it, and people will like it. So, well, thank you for being on. I'm super happy and excited to put this out there. I do have to step off, but I am so grateful for you, and I'm really excited for Atlanta Pro and seeing how you do, and
Thank
seeing it all
you.
come
Thank
together.
you.
So,
Thank you. I'm so excited to see you compete too, and it was literally my honor. I'm like so happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrea. I will put all of your information in the show notes. So anyone that wants to follow along Andrea's journey or hire her for some consulting with resume building, what else do you do with stuff like that?
Do like resume building, like job search assistance, also just like mentality coaching. I feel like that's really beneficial for
It
people,
is.
especially when they're looking for like work-life balance with bodybuilding and such.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. I will catch you on Instagram. And everyone,
Yes.
please like, subscribe, comment, and follow Andrea.
Thanks.